Well, welcome everyone to reInvent. I'm excited to spend the next hour talking everything identity and access. My name is Bridget Johnson. I am a director in AWS Identity. If you've been to my talks, which I think some of them have before, I like talking about permissions and access controls, but today we expanded the scope. So we're gonna talk identity and access. They tend to go hand in hand. So I'd like to introduce Karen Haberkorn. She is also a director in AWS Identity. And fun fact, she used to be my boss. She's not my only boss sitting in the room. An old boss of mine is also sitting in the room, so this is a little awkward, but it should be fun. And today we're gonna talk all about how you can navigate your identity and access solutions to spur productivity, to really drive innovation within your engineering teams. So this is how we're gonna spend the next hour. First, we're gonna recap what customers tell us. We talk to customers all year long, and there's trends along the way, and we like to summarize them here, and then how we're gonna help you achieve what customers are telling us. Then we're gonna provide the foundation of identity and access. There's a lot of background knowledge of how to think about identity and access, some knowledge about access controls and whatnot. Then we'll talk about the frameworks and mental models to set your AWS estate up for success and agility. And then guess what? You're all gonna have 4 jobs to do today. You're gonna be quite tired. First, you're gonna be a central security team. Then you're gonna go be a builder and managing infrastructure access. Then you're gonna be a different type of builder, and you're gonna be adding identity and access into your application for your customers, for your consumers. And then you're gonna be a data analyst. And all along the way, we're gonna talk about new things, and we're gonna have some live demos. Hopefully they'll go well.
They're gonna be great. The demos are gonna be great. Well, thanks for kicking us off, Bridget. I am also super excited to be here to talk about identity and access. I get more of the identity piece, as Bridget said. For those of you who've been to Bridget's talks before, you know she really likes to highlight her horse pickles. So I want to point out that we snuck the word Spur into the title of our talk. How'd we do? Yeah?
You all got it? Okay, maybe.
One of the reasons I'm so excited to be here at reInvent, not just for the talk, for the whole week, is what Bridget said. We really like to talk to customers, and this is such a great place to hear more about your feedback. And I want to sort of summarize a little bit of what we often hear as we talk to customers through the year about what they care about identity and access. The core of it really is that everyone wants to operate securely, but they don't want to get in the way of their developers building and being innovative and really causing the things that add value to their businesses. And so they're looking for a way to achieve both without having to make any trade-offs. A lot of customers tell us that looks like having a way to do central administration and verifying that security standards are met, while still giving developers the ability to set their own permissions in a way that automatically or easily adheres to those security standards. Similarly, they're trying to make sure that their data analysts can produce all the insights, but only with the data they're supposed to see, without any risk of there being data that one person's supposed to see and one's not. This is a set of combination of requirements that can be really complicated. So, like Bridget said, we want to start with the mental model, the sort of foundation of what you need to know about identity and access in AWS as we dig into all these use cases. The foundational question, the essential question to access management is who can access what? But in your individual company, it takes a bunch of different forms, right? We already talked about you're going to have 4 jobs today. So let's break down the forms the question can take. We'll start with the who. Your identities can be people, they can be machines, they can be software. In our talk today, we're going to focus more on the people side of the equation, at the people who are securing and building and operating your applications, and their business partners who are inspecting how they're doing. And then, since people have so many different responsibilities, what they need to access in the environment is different too. The operators who are managing your infrastructure, they need to access to the individual resources. They're creating them, they're monitoring them, they're operating them. The application builders are then composing those resources into the applications that are compelling for your customers. Your business partners are only looking at the output of that. What metrics do they produce to see how it all goes? So the what can vary a lot too. And that means you really need access as the glue between the who and the what, ensuring that the right identities are accessing the right resources under the right conditions. At the top of the slide, you can see the identity piece. First, we have to know who the identity is, and we need to make sure they are who they say they are. For your workforce, that means signing into a corporate identity provider, providing a second factor, perhaps an MFA device to verify their identity. For your machines, if they're in AWS, it means assuming an IAM role, or they could do that outside of AWS with IAM roles anywhere, which uses a certificate authority to verify who the machine is.
So many roles.
So many roles. If it's a customer, they're signing into your application using a provider like Amazon Cognito that supports a bunch of different identity standards so they can sign in a way that's comfortable and convenient for them. Then, once you know who the identity is, they've authenticated, you move to the bottom half of the side where you can see what is that identity allowed to do. This is called authorization. It's the permissions the identity has to take in your environment. If the resources in question are AWS infrastructure, you can set guardrails that sort of set an outer boundary of what a particular identity can do. And then you can use IAM access controls to get really fine-grained about what specific actions they can take on specific stuff. And if it's a customer, there's a similar opportunity to do the same thing within your applications using Amazon verified permissions to define what that customer can do while they're in their application. All of this is taking place in what we like to call your AWS estate. That's all of your AWS accounts, all of the AWS provided business applications that you use. The best practice is to set up your estate in a multi-account environment with dedicated accounts for shared tooling, such as your security tooling. Perhaps you're running guard duty or access analyzer on behalf of your entire organization. And then specific accounts for your workloads using dev, test, and prod stages so you can really get the benefits of the built-in security boundary that each AWS account has.
Why does it say ice cream on there?
Oh, check it out. This is our actual estate that we're going to look at today in our talk. And we have an ice cream store. I love ice cream, so I am super excited for the demos you're going to see as we explore this estate.
All going to be about ice cream.
All right. For that estate, you need your workforce to be able to access it in a convenient way. So we recommend using IAM Identity Center for your human access, for the people in your company who need to get into AWS and do stuff. One really great thing about Identity Center is that it connects with your existing identity source that you have in your company, whether that's one of AWS partners, Okta, Ping, OneLogin. There are quite a few of them that are integrated with Identity Center. Or you might be using Microsoft Entra ID or Google Identities. As long as it's standards-based, it will integrate into Identity Center. If you don't have a corporate identity provider or prefer not to connect one, you can also create identities directly in Identity Center. And one cool thing, I'm not sure if you heard this, but last week, if you would do that, if you create your identities directly in Identity Center, we actually changed it so you get a better security posture by default. We turn on MFA by default, such that when your new users sign in for the first time, we prompt them to configure it. And then as long as they keep signing in with the same context, it's all seamless, but if their context changes, we ask them to present MFA.
I'm always a big fan of secure by default, so that's good.
It's awesome. And then once you have those identities configured in Identity Center, you can use them to access all those AWS accounts you have. You can use it to access AWS-provided applications, or you can do both. And the or is really key here, because a lot of you, if you've been AWS customers for a long time, you may already have direct IAM federation set up to your AWS accounts. You may like it that way. But on the other hand, you might have heard about some cool new app you want to try. Like just this weekend, Code Catalyst announced that they support Identity Center. And you might think, hey, I'll set up Identity Center just for that app. It will run happily alongside your existing IAM federation, and you can keep it that way if you're happy with it, or you can gradually move other things over. It's up to you.
Sounds pretty flexible.
Totally flexible.
All right, my favorite part, access controls in AWS. So Karen said access controls are the glue that holds it together. And when we think about these access controls in AWS, we think about the shared security model. So what is AWS's job and what is your job as the customer? AWS has a job of providing, first, robust access controls. Our customers tell us all the time they love the fine-grained access controls that we provide in AWS. And once you set those access controls, because you get to specify who can access what, under which specific conditions. It's very powerful. For every AWS request, AWS's job is to enforce those access controls. And we do that with IAM by returning either an allowed or denied answer. There's no middle ground, it's allowed or denied. So that's for every AWS request.
What's pretty amazing about that, every AWS request comes to more than 1 billion requests per second, which is pretty amazing that IAM handles all that.
It's not me sitting in the back telling allowed or denied, even though some people think it is. Our job is also to provide you guidance to set the right access controls, providing you tools, informations, dashboards, all that jazz to help you get to the right place. And that brings us to your job. Your job, because you have the business requirements, you have the business needs, you have the engineers building, is to create, maintain, and refine your access controls. And one way we like to facilitate that is the workflow towards least privilege, which is to set permissions, verify permissions, and then refine those permissions down, especially as you get towards production. All right, let me talk about the access controls that you can use. What I'm going to say a few times today is by default, access is denied in AWS. This is a feature. It's very great, secure by default. So in order to grant access, to allow access, I'm actually going to go to the bottom of the slide, and you have two options, the identity-based policy or the resource-based policy. The identity-based policy will be attached to those roles that Karen mentioned, and it defines what that role is allowed to do, which actions they can take on which resources under which conditions. You can also have resource-based policies. These would be attached to the resource directly. Amazon S3 bucket policies are probably the most famous out there. And this is really good for direct cross-account access. Those are the only two policies that can grant access. However, you might want to say, hey, I'm an IT admin or I'm a central security person. I want to create some rules of the road, maybe like rules of the playground, let's say. So you want to restrict access. First, you have service control policies. These are applied at the organization, and they apply to all principals, including root, in your account. If I had to rename this feature, I would call it principal control policies, because that's what it's doing. Then if you pop down into the account, you have permission boundaries. Permission boundaries are really powerful. Let's say you have an engineer named Karen, and hey Karen, we're gonna allow you to create some roles for your Lambda function so they can run, this makes sense. But we're gonna make sure that when you create that role, it has a maximum boundary. So if you happen to get lazy one day and attach a full admin policy, then that permission boundary will kick in and say, hey, even though the role has full access, the permission boundary doesn't allow it, so we won't allow.
Bridget knows I can get a little aggressive with my permissions, so I might need a admin.
Karen's gonna need a lot of reining in today. And then we have VPC endpoint policies. These are really good for your network perimeter, and they attach to the VPC endpoint. So what's inside those policies? Inside those policies, we have the IAM policy language. They are statements. You can have one statement or multiple statements. And this is where we really get fine-grained. We like to talk about PARC, principal, action, resource, condition. So the principal is the identity that's allowed or denied access. Then you pop into the action. This is where AWS thrives, because actions are defined by, first, the service. You see in this case, it's Secrets Manager. And then for each service, there's a list of specific actions. Get secret, delete secret, list multiple secrets. This is fine-grained. But those actions can get even finer because you have them on specific resources. In this case, the pickle secret. And then you can get even further by saying, but only if these conditions are met. So this secret can only be accessed if it's called via Lambda. So if somebody assumed the role, not via Lambda, then access would be denied. Okay, so you've set all your policies, your restrictions, you've granted access, used your PARC model. How does AWS actually enforce these? Once again, only allowed or denied comes out. So as you're creating requests around AWS and you're plopping around, you're going to make a request to a service. That service is going to create a context. This context is going to have key value pairs. It's going to have what actions in there, what resources, what tags you're putting in, what network you're coming from, what service you're using. It's a whole slew of things. Then IAM is going to go fetch those policies and say, okay, only if there is an allow statement that matches that context will access be granted. And you can see in this example, the action matches, the resource is star in the policy, so that applies to resource, and then the resource tag also matches, so access would be granted. If there was a deny somewhere in that policy set that also matched, then deny trumps all allows. Okay. Last bit of my quick and dirty access control lesson today. So let's imagine you're Pickles. Pickles is trying to get access to an S3 bucket. Obviously, it's full of apples. And so when Pickles makes the request, the VPC endpoint policy must allow. The service control policy must also allow. By default, all organizations have a star.star service control policy. This does not mean everybody has full access. It simply means go listen to the access controls in the account, which are denied by default. But if there's a SCP that has further restrictions, that must allow. If there's a permission boundary attached to Pickles' role, that must allow. At this point in time, Pickles has no access, nada. Still can't get to the apples. Pickles must have an identity policy attached to the role, or the bucket must say Pickles is allowed access. Now, if it's in the same account, one or the other will do, because we trust the account boundary. If it's cross-account, both must happen. A customer told me this one time, and I cannot get it out of my head, so I'm sharing it with you today. It's like that hotel room door. You have 2 hotel rooms next to each other. Both doors have to open for access to pass through. So when you think about cross-account access, think about that hotel room, those shared hotel rooms. And then finally, if Pickles is wearing fancy boots, the session policy can restrict access even further. It cannot go above those green boxes.
Okay, so we've seen the core model, so you have the context for what we need to do here. Now let's see how we put this model to work in your company. I think it's important to realize that to get the best results out of all the teams in your company, you want to lean into their strengths. You want everybody to be doing what they're best at. So you want your central security team to be focused on setting standards, verifying standards that are met, providing tools that enforce or detect things that don't comply with standards. You don't want them to have to set every single thing themselves. They'll be here all night. It's like Bridget pressing the button for every single authorization. But same for the builders. You want them to be focusing on adding innovative features, figuring out cool ways you can build new applications that will add more value to your business. You don't want them to be stuck trying to remember, like, how do I author a policy again? I never really learned all those details. So by working together, if the security teams are providing the tooling that helps the builders move fast, you can get the best results. I think this model helps you visualize how those teams can work together. The security team is responsible for the data perimeter, that outer boundary that sets the rules of the playground that Bridget was talking about. Like, what are just the invariants that have to be true in our organization that we want all identities to have to adhere to? In the meantime, the builders can be responsible for the cycle in the middle of the slide, the fine-grained permissions where you initially set broader ones, verify they're correct, and then as your requirements settle, you can refine them on the journey toward least privilege. Okay, we are ready to dig into what it's like to be on these specific teams. Bridget told you you're going to have 4 jobs today, and you just got your first job as a member of the Central Security Team. Congratulations. As a member of this team, your team's responsibility is just what I said. It's trying to set up builders for success. It's giving them the tooling that will help them be secure by default. It's verifying the security standards are met. It's defining what those standards are for how your company operates. We're going to look at 2 of the jobs that you specifically have to be done as a member of the Central Security Team. First, we're going to look at setting up those guardrails, that outer data perimeter that we just showed you on the model. And then we're going to look at how you verify that IAM configurations are correct. And now I want to talk a little bit about the tools you have at your disposal to do these jobs. And you'll notice in the upper right, that's the right? In the upper right-hand corner, there's a cute little toolbox. For every single job we talk about for the rest of the hour, when you see that toolbox, it means these are the tools that are available for you to do the job. So in this case, you have AWS Control Tower, which is our cloud governance service that guides you through creating a multi-account environment according to best practices. And then it has a whole curated library of controls that you can select from to help establish your data perimeter. In fact, just yesterday, we added a new set of controls to that curated library that were specifically based on things we heard from customers that they wanted to make it easier to meet data sovereignty requirements. So you can check out the controls in that library and apply the ones that make sense for your business. All Control Tower controls are based on underlying AWS capabilities. They could be implemented as service control policies that Bridget was talking about, as config rules. You can actually unpack every Control Tower control to see how it's implemented. And if you need to, you can augment them by writing your own policies, or you might choose to do that just for specific business requirements. All right, so we've mentioned this outer boundary, the data perimeter. I want to dig in a little bit to what we mean by that. There are 3 entities at play. There's your identities, your resources, and your networks. The idea of the outer perimeter is you basically want to be able to express a statement that only your trusted identities can access your trusted resources from your expected network locations. And Bridget's going to take us through how the policies that help us control each piece of that statement.
We're back to access controls, my favorite part. So this is one of my favorite charts in AWS. I think it really simplifies where you're at and how to implement data perimeters. So the way I think about it is, Karen said there's 3 parts. They're kind of like a triangle in my head. So if you're looking at establishing an identity perimeter, which is all about your trusted identities, you're going to want to put the restrictions on the other 2, the resources and the network. And the way you're going to do that is, in those restrictions, you're going to say, hey, make sure my identities are trusted. And you're going to use your handy-dandy condition keys to do that with principal org ID and principal is AWS service. Moving on to the resource perimeter, this is all about trusted resources. So you're going to put the restriction on the other 2, the identities and the network, and once again, use a handy-dandy condition key to say, hey, make sure my resources are trusted with resource org ID. You get the pattern? Okay. And then you have your network perimeter, and this is all about expected networks. So you'll put the restrictions on the other 2, which is your identities and your resources. Once again, our friends condition key pop in with source IP, source VPC, and AWS service condition keys as well. When you're putting restrictions on identities, you can use that SCP, member principal control policy. When you're putting on network, you can use your VPC endpoint policy. These will be broad across your entire organization. And when you're putting it on resources, which I'll demo today, you also have to put it on each individual resource-based policy and go pop around and do that. Speaking of demos, we're going to jump right in. This is your state today. So I'm actually going to be visiting 5 different accounts. So this will just help you keep in mind. We have our security OU, our infrastructure OU, and a prod and a dev account. All right, so Pickles, he was in last year's demo. He's in a different organization. He's at a barn, at a farm, and he can't have ice cream. And so we want to make sure that only our trusted identities can access our resources. So we have a bucket that has ice cream recipes in it. We don't want Pickles to access it. I'm going to show you that he does have access, and he's been granted access via the bucket policy. And then I'm going to add a deny statement, and hopefully he doesn't have access if the demo works.
Ice cream's not good for horses, so we don't want him to have it.
It's not good. I actually Googled this because I was like, I don't think he'd like it. But anyway, so we're going to add this deny statement on there. And this deny, if you walk through this policy, the deny will kick in when somebody is making an S3 request to our secret recipes. And it kicks in if the principal org ID is not in your org, so Pickles will be outside of our org, and it's not an AWS service. So both of these conditions have to be met to happen. Okay, here's fancy buttons. Here we go. Okay, so first I'm going to show you the bucket policy. We're going to go to our prod account here. Anybody know what console I'm in?
Yes, this is the Identity Center console, and actually you'll notice we're going to do all our demos from Identity Center, and you'll see how easy it is to bounce back and forth between these accounts that Bridget wants to access.
All right, so secret recipes. I'm going to show you my permissions right now. Luckily, public access is turned on. You can see that this account has access. This account is outside my organization. You can see that I have a profile named Pickles. Pickles is also outside my organization. So he can actually access these recipes. Not good for his overall health.
This is not
let's
the way
go
we want it to
remediate
work.
that. So I'm going to edit this bucket policy. I am going to take this. This is the exact same statement that I showed you on the bigger screen. So you can see there my org ID and all that good mojo. All right, what are we thinking? I'm going to run the exact same 2 commands. Pickles outside our organization, access denied. Oops. Does that work? There we go. Also access denied.
And the great thing about this is it's such a powerful control. It didn't specifically check for Pickles. It checked for any untrusted identity from outside your organization. So if Pickles has other horse friends, they would have been denied too.
Right. And so you can copy and paste that all over your resources and move on. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our trusted resources. Why does this matter, Karen?
Trusted resources matter because someone you trust in your organization isn't necessarily going to have your best interests in mind, or maybe they're just careless. You don't want an employee being able to take your most valuable corporate secrets and copy them to their own personal account outside of your company environment, because who knows what could happen to them.
So I'm going to be a dev inside my organization, so I should have access, but I don't want to be able to copy it out. So the policy that we're going to apply, and that we're going to use an SCP to do this, is the deny will kick in if somebody's making an S3 request, and if the resource org ID is not equal to my org. Here we go, second demo. Press
Because
the
we don't want some ice cream store company employee to take the secret recipe and move it into his own bucket outside of the company accounts.
Okay, I'm going to show you organizations. But first while I do that, I have a demo 2. Here we go. One, I have ice cream dev. That's a profile for a developer in the organization. And you can see, one, I can access it, but even more so, I can copy it, to this pickles grain bucket. So I can put ice cream in pickles bucket. That's not good, right? That's outside my organization. And so you can see the bucket here is pickles grain. Okay, so let's restrict that. We don't like that happening around my organization. I am going to service control policies. I am looking at this resource data perimeter. It's the same one. It's not applied anywhere, so I'm going to go attach it. And I don't want anybody in my org doing this. I'm going to attach it everywhere. So it's successfully attached. Now, if I try to still list objects in my bucket in my organization, totally fine.
Still do that, because I'm...
If I try to list objects in pickles grain bucket, access is denied. I'm not even allowed to get the objects in pickles grain bucket, let alone copy resources into it, which is the third command line. All right.
Access denied.
So we've successfully set up data perimeters and guardrails and had 2 successful demos. That's 2 out of 5, everybody. All right, here we go.
We're on a roll.
So next up is verifying IAM configurations. And this sounds kind of boring, right? A little boring?
This is like not at all boring.
It's not all boring because we just made your job a lot easier. Earlier this week, we announced 2 new improvements to IAM Access Analyzer, this being one of them. First of all, now as a central security team, you have a dashboard. Your dashboard helps you analyze access and understand where you need to go poke further to inspect. We also announced a new finding type, unused access findings. So if you go turn on Access Analyzer, you get to configure it however many days you want. 5 days, that's probably a little tight. 90 days, what we usually hear from customers, but you can go all the way up to 180. It will go in, it'll monitor all the accounts in your organization and generate findings when it's there. And then it shows up in a dashboard, and so it can help you inspect where you need to go poke and refine permissions. Okay, that's pretty great, but in those unused access findings, there are 4 types. One is unused access keys, and if there is one thing you take away from today, please go turn this on. Please go look at unused IAM access keys. Those are long-term creds. If they are unused, you don't want them lying around. They do not bring you joy. Please get rid of them. Then you also have unused IAM user passwords, unused roles. For those active roles, the ones that are actually being used, you might have started broader and need to refine. So we share the unused services and unused actions, and that will help you refine permissions. This is in addition to the existing external access findings we had that help you identify public and cross-account access across 14 different resource types. Both of them integrate with Security Hub, so you can see all of your security findings in one place. And our customers tell us they love the Event Bridge because they can create tickets off of it and go poke their engineering teams, so that's kind of nice. Unused access is a paid-for feature. The cool part about this is, though, that in the member accounts, you get all of that raw data for free. So if you have one place where all the findings are, then you can go tell your engineers to go look at the last access key, last access, role last used, and scope down the permissions just using that data. We're going to show a demo. How fun. You want to explain the demo, Karen, what I set up?
We're going to go figure out if there are any unused access in our ice cream store account, because we're, if that's true, we want to follow your own advice. We do not want to leave any unused access keys or any IAM users who shouldn't have passwords out sitting around. So
I have already enabled IAM Access Analyzer. I'm in my security tooling. I'm going to go to Access Analyzer here. And you can see that it has done a good job of finding a bunch of cross-account access in IAM. There's also a S3 finding here for cross-account access, so that's good to know about. And then down here I have all my unused access. And
we
I have a
quite
product.
A lot of it.
Yeah, and a product count that seems to not be doing very well, especially since we planted a lot of unused access for the demo. But the cool part is you can jump into the findings, and just like I told you for your homework, you can start typing in access keys. Wow. And you can see all of my unused access keys in my organization. You can see across the different accounts.
Whoa, Nelly.
Whoa, Nelly is right. The other day, I deactivated and deleted some access keys, and Access Analyzer took care of it for me. It resolved the finding. And so you don't have to do anything. You just have to clean up based on the information, and it will resolve the finding for you. All righty. Okay, so you're done being a central security team. That was easy, right? Now you're gonna go be a builder. You're gonna put your engineer hat, and we're gonna do infrastructure access. And so when I talk to my engineers, when we first start building, they don't know what they need access to. They're gonna be exploring, trying new things, creating proof of concepts. It's really beautiful to see that innovation. But they also do want to adhere to security standards, and they wanna make sure they give the right access to the right resources. And over time, as they go up to production, you gotta tighten that access, right? And so the 3 jobs to be done here are 1, to grant that fine-grained access, ensure that permissions do adhere to security standards, and refine access based on use. This is an engineer's life for infrastructure access. So you can imagine when they're granting access, they might create a policy. Maybe they'll use Access Analyzer to help them a little bit. They'll check in that policy. They'll have a peer review. And then we want to automate reviews. Our customers tell us they don't want a central team creating policies and approving every single policy. So they want to automate as much as they can. And so here, which is what we'll demo today, is a validation step where you actually can verify some properties of your IAM policies and make sure they adhere to your security standards. How would you do that? Well, we have 3 friends with us. 1, all in IAM Access Analyzer. So the first friend existed already, that's validate policy. That one is all about AWS opinionated checks. And the ones you want to listen to are the security warnings, because you probably shouldn't be going out with some security warnings, and errors, because that's your functional check. The 2 new friends that we've added just this week are check no new access and check access not granted. Now, check no new access allows you to say, hey, I have a previous policy, and I have a new policy. Let's make sure that new policy is equal or less than permissions. Now, I don't like to pick favorites, but I do have a favorite. Check access not granted allows you to pass in a policy, and then you can also pass in a list of actions. What list would you pass in? 1, you can pass in, if you're putting anything in an SCP, pass in all of those actions that you have, because that will inform the developers way earlier that they're gonna hit a roadblock later on. It gives them more information to move faster. The other thing are these gray area actions that we got going on. Like delete DynamoDB table, you don't want that thing floating around, especially in production. It's probably pretty powerful. And so you might wanna say, hey, in most cases, we'd have to pop out to a different approval to grant that. The 2 new checks are powered by automated reasoning, which is our way in AWS of using provable technologies, using fancy math. We actually deduce it down to a math problem, and so it's very accurate, and so I really like it. Okay, we're gonna demo this. We've actually built this in to our code commit and code pipeline, so we're gonna show that. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna do the whole like cake and oven thing, you know, baked, all that thing, like a cooking show.
Meaning she's got some stuff she might have already run beforehand to have it all set up.
And then we'll reject the policy, we'll update the policy, it will run, and then I'll have some stuff that's already run for you. What are we gonna run? Let me go a little bit deeper here. Okay, so we have a policy, I got lazy, Dynamo star, resource star, it's pretty broad, but I don't want delete DynamoDB table. So I'm gonna run this check in my pipeline and it will fail. The policy will fail, it won't be allowed to go any further. Okay, that's pretty simple. Now, this is the one I actually wasn't gonna show you until my team said, but Bridget, it's so powerful, show them how. So here I am.
You all are ready for this one, I can tell.
Okay, so check no new access, you pass in 2 policies. One is gonna be a reference policy. So this is the policy on the left. That policy, I don't like putting star in a policy, but we did it. So you put in star in a policy, then you have a deny statement. And your deny statement is all about something that is super sensitive. And this can include resources, this can also include conditions. This is why you would wanna use check no new access in this way. So the only way that this policy can be more permissive is if the policy you're comparing it against grants access to that sensitive table. As you can see, my policy on the right does do that. It says allow Dynamo all of the actions on all of the resources. So when I pass this in, this check will fail.
It's okay you put stars in this policy. It's just your reference policy. You're not using it for actual access. You're using it to compare and sort of evaluate, is my policy more permissive?
That is correct. Okay.
All right, let's see the pipeline.
Let's see the code, the pipeline, the whole shebang. So I'm going to go to code pipeline. I will also go to code build in another tab so we can pop around a little bit more. All right, so baked is our happy end state. I'll just let you know that right now. So I have this policy, pretty simple repository, and you can see it's here in my pipeline, which I've run before. It's in progress. Why is it in progress? Because it went through the checks, and it actually failed before. I'm going to show you the logs. You can see here that it said, hey, there's new access. This was the check no new access, so the same things I showed you. And then on this one, it actually popped out, hey, delete tables in there, and that's no good. So it popped a manual review process, and I'm going to say rejected, not great. Okay, then I will go to our code, and to make your lives easier, I have copy-pasted, so you don't have to watch me type in horrible things. I'm going to commit the change. Oops. Everyone can see my email address, which is totally fine. Better policy. Last one I called it was silly policy. So it will kick off a new build here, which you'll see in a second. Hopefully it'll refresh and kick that off in a second. Yeah, in progress. All right, I've already run this today. I will show you in the other repository, sorry about that, that we have, oh, I put in the wrong access. Sorry about that, folks. All right, I'll just use my baked step. Where's the other policy that I was supposed to copy and paste from? All right, sorry, I can copy and paste from here. Anyway, this is the baked one where I have given a more fine-grained policy, which is just 2 actions, as well as a specific DynamoDB table, which is not the specified one. Okay, totally fine. And in the baked pipeline, this has all validated. And so you can see this works, and there's no new access, and there's no DynamoDB delete table.
What I really like about this demo is you can imagine that almost all the time this will be fully automated. The builder will have submitted a policy, it will pass all the checks. No one had to get involved from the central security team. Bridget intentionally showed you an example where the builder took an action, added something to the policy, and in that case it popped it out. It was totally appropriate to inspect it. Maybe there was a reason, in which case she could have allowed it, based on the use case, but it sort of separated, it focused her attention on the specific cases that required more inspection.
So to help you get to what we just did, there is a AWS CloudFormation policy validator tool out there. It's also for Terraform. And we have a whole library of reference policies. So that trick I did with check no new access, you can check AMIs, specific DynamoDB tables, specific secrets, specific queues. We have a whole list of policies that you can just use to get started easier. Pickles thinks that's cool, so go check it out. And finally, for those 2 new features that I talked about today, I would like to thank our partners who have decided to launch with us. So Tenable, Datadog, Savient, Palo Alto, DXC Technologies, and Deloitte. They are all integrating these features into their workflows, into their solutions, to bring that solution closer to you where you manage security. All right, and the last one is to refine access. I'm not going to demo this here today, but you have some tools at your disposal. If you got an Event Bridge notification and your central team said, hey, go refine that, you can either say, hey, I'm Access Analyzer, go generate a policy for me. Access Analyzer will go look at your CloudTrail logs, map that to IAM permissions, and generate a fine-grained policy. Really easy, especially to use in dev. Now, if you're in prod, maybe you want to refine access, but you want to do it little by little. You can go look at all the last access data right then and there and maybe remove one service at a time, one action at a time, and take very intentional steps to clean up what no longer brings you joy. All right.
Okay, we are ready for your 3rd job of the day. We're going to move up the stack from the infrastructure layer to the application layer. So you're still a developer, but now you're in a team that's trying to build just really compelling applications for your customers. That means that's really how you want to spend your time, thinking about your customers, what features they need, building out the features they need, making your applications better. Of course, you want your application to be secure. You want your customers to be able to sign in securely, and you want them to be able to access only the features they should. But you'd rather use a proven solution so you can focus on what's most important to you, which is the application functionality itself. So you basically have two jobs. The first one is implementing secure sign up and sign in for your customers. That's the authentication side. And the second one is making sure users who do sign in can only take the actions they should. For example, if I sign into our store's ice cream sundae application, I should only be able to see the ice cream sundae recipes I created, or maybe ones that a customer shared with me. But I shouldn't be able to see any of your ice cream sundae recipes unless you were kind enough to share them with me. And so we want to make sure that we can enforce those kinds of rules. You're going to see two tools at work in the demo we'll show you in a minute. The first one is Amazon Cognito. It's our customer identity service that you use to help your customers sign up and sign into your application. And the next one is Amazon Verify Permissions, which is used to define the permissions that any signed-in user can take, in this case, in our ice cream sundae application. So let me tell you a tiny bit more about Cognito. If you haven't used it, what developers tell us is they really appreciate how flexible its APIs are. You can use it, not only are they very flexible, but you can use it with a bunch of AWS tools, such as AWS Amplify, that helps you get your application up and running quickly without you having to sort of worry too much about what steps do I have to take to the identity part. A lot of those steps are taken for you if you use this tool like Amplify. In addition, it includes a built-in hosted UI. So if you're comfortable with the defaults, you can just sort of attach that sign-up pipeline and use it as is. If you have unique or custom requirements, though, we include a bunch of integrations with services such as AWS Lambda, so you can fully customize each step if that's how your business rolls. The last great thing I want to highlight about Cognito is it's fully standards-based, so your customers can sign in using whichever way they're most familiar signing in. You can support social login through Apple or Google. You can support direct federation through a SAML-supported or OIDC-supported source. And so it means that whoever your customers are, if it's another business or it's consumers, you can make sure you're meeting them where they are with layered security features for you to ensure the sign-in is secure.
I think the mental model is don't roll your own.
Don't roll. This is definitely a place where, I mean, you don't roll your own. I totally agree.
All right.
All right, let's talk a tiny bit about the permissions part of the puzzle here. Amazon Verify Permissions is a service we launched earlier this year when customers told us, hey, that's great that everyone's signing in securely, but we don't want to have to roll our own permissions of what users can do in the application either. It's based on an open source language called Cedar, which is purpose designed for permissions and authorization, based on the same fancy math that Bridget was talking about, automated reasoning that lets you verify for sure that only a user can access what they're supposed to be, but in this case, within your custom app, as opposed to AWS resources, the stuff that you actually care about. We're really focused on the developer experience of verified permissions. Just in the last week, we added a couple features to it to make it easier for you to use it for permissions in your applications. The one I'm really excited about is there's actually a visual schema editor now, so you can better visualize the relationships between identities and your custom actions and your custom resources in your application. There's also a batch mode now where you can authorize sets of actions if they go together logically in your application, which helps it make it more efficient as your application scales.
The demo time?
I want to see it. Let's see them in action.
All right, so we have an ice cream sundae application. I'm going to show you the Amazon Cognito pool. Then I'm going to show you the verified permissions that are set up. And then we'll log in as Bridget and Karen. And then I'll share a sundae with Karen, because she loves pumpkin spice just as much as I do, obviously. And the two policies that are in Amazon verified permissions, you can see are the default. Right, these actions don't exist in AWS. They are your specific actions. We don't have a Sunday service that we know of. Anyway, and so you can kind of see, like, this is what happens, and then when access gets shared, it's to a specific resource, which will be of type Sunday. I do want to go back to the previous demo that I thought I copied and pasted the wrong policy. I actually copied and pasted the right policy, and you can see that it was approved, right? Because we scoped down that policy,
nice.
And life was all good. Okay. So we are going to head over to our development, and I'm going to go over to Cognito. And I will also go over to Amazon Verified Permissions. We'll take a look at our user pool, and because Karen and I have already signed up because we love ice cream so much, Karen's there, I'm there, you can see all of our users. Then we also have this policy store. This is an Amazon verified permissions. I'll go look at our policies, and you can see some Sundays have already been shared. Let's see who's got some Sundays shared with them. I think this is Neha, one of our other coworkers, so that's pretty exciting. Okay, so I'm gonna log in. This is our Sunday application, so great. It looks more like gelato, but anyway. Karen, this is you. Okay, and then I have like a separate session for me. Hopefully that all works. Okay, you want some pumpkin spice, Karen?
I know Bridget loves pumpkin spice. She always wants people to try it, so I should try it, I think.
So I will put in Karen here, and it will get added. And then if I refresh Karen over here, what's gonna happen? You have Sunday. Okay, so what should we see in AVP?
We should see a new policy because Bridget just created a share to give me access to see her Sunday. So it should have generated a policy from our template that supports that share.
Look at that.
And there it is.
There it is. And you can kind of see, you can list the ingredients, you can read the Sunday, and all of that. All right.
I do want to point out we have a playground so you can play with this policy language, a Cedar playground, and I think it's a good way to sort of get used to the idea. The language is really designed to be straightforward, so you can, so seeing these policies real fast might be like, whoa, but the playground gives you a chance to mess with it yourself.
Last job.
All right, it is your last job of the day. We are almost done with this. Hopefully you're ready to move from being a builder of code to a builder of insights. You're going to be a data analyst on a data science team. At this point, your goal as a data analyst in the data science team is to really understand how the business is doing, to be able to look at all the metrics, all the business results, and to really make guidance to help grow the business or optimize it. Of course, you only want to do that in a secure way. Some of this data is really proprietary, and we want to make sure only the people who should see it can actually see it.
Like our ice cream recipes.
Like the ice cream recipes, but perhaps even the sales data if there's a really competitive ice cream market out there. We're going to look at a couple jobs to be done in this data team. First is that core job, the one about creating the reports that really give you insights into how the business is doing, but only such that people who should see that data can see it. The second job, a little more subtle, is supporting the ability to audit that what happened actually happened, right? Like you created the report so that only the people who should see it, but is that what actually happened? You want to be able to verify that the people who should see the data are the one who did so. And the third is, when appropriate, you may have certain kinds of data you actually do want to share outside your organization boundary. All right, to do these jobs, we're going to work with a new feature in IAM Identity Center that I am super excited about, which is called Trusted Identity Propagation. And then we're going to wrap up the day with a little example from AWS Resource Access Manager, which is an Amazon service that makes it easier for you to share resources between accounts in your organization or if necessary, outside of it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this new feature of IAM Identity Center called Trusted Identity Propagation. This is totally different than what you have heard about the way we do access control elsewhere in AWS. What we realized is if you're someone working with a data lake, this idea of having an IAM role that gives you access to a specific resource and a specific account can really make your job harder. You're going to have to go get data from one account and go get data from another account. You're going to be switching roles all the time. Your administrator is going to have a big headache because they're trying to set up all those roles for all the different data access scenarios. You really need a different model to achieve your results without so much overhead. So the model we're taking with this is user-centric access. The access to the data will be based on who the user is and their attributes, or what groups they're part of, and that's it. It's about who the person is, not about this mapping to where they're going. So here's how it works. A user would log into an AWS Analytics application, such as QuickSight, or into a web application outside of AWS that authenticates outside of AWS that uses data from, say, Redshift or S3. And then they'd be prompted to sign in to their corporate identity provider. We grab the appropriate attributes about who they are and what group memberships they're part of, and we use the OAuth 2.0 standard to create a token for that user. Then, as the user's doing stuff in the application and needs to access data, the application will make a request to the data service and pass along the user's token. Then, the data service can inspect the token, figure out who the user is, and enforce the permissions based on who the user is to the data. As a result, it doesn't matter how the user gets to that data. Did she go through QuickSight to get to the Redshift table? Did she use the Redshift query editor to get to the Redshift table? Because it's who she is and not exactly what role she assumed at any part of the process, it's going to get enforced based on her identity attributes. As a quick example, maybe the data analyst at our ice cream store really wants to look at the store performance of all of our ice cream stores across the country. She could sign into QuickSight, which would then trigger a sign into her corporate identity provider. Maybe it's Okta that's integrated with IAM Identity Center. IAM Identity Center would make the OAuth token, and then as she starts building her report, getting data out of Redshift tables, it would pass the OAuth token to Redshift. Redshift would do token introspection, figure out who the user is, enforce Redshift level permissions on what data she can get, and then as she's building her report, only the data she can see shows up. If she shares that report with her boss, the chief revenue officer, maybe he can see all of the store sales for the whole country. But if she shares it with a regional sales manager based on his attributes in the groups he's in, he might only be able to see the store sales for the stores in his region. It's all enforced based on who the identities are. And the last piece of this is doing it this way also solves the second job you have, the support the audit job. Because as she's taking these actions, going to QuickSight, passing through to Redshift, it's who she is. That's what's being logged in CloudTrail is her user identity, not an obfuscated IAM role that you have to go unpack later. Same thing in the service logs. Like if you look in the QuickSight history logs, you'll see who she was as a user and the actions she was taking. It just makes things easier.
Helps a lot with that who can access what story, right?
Auditors for sure.
One thing I love about this is it really smooths out those inflection points with the role hopping, and it's all based on the user now. It's really wonderful.
So talking a little bit about Redshift and QuickSight, I just want to mention that we did announce integrations with the new S3 Access Grants feature, as well as with EMR and Lake Formation, and there are a bunch more coming soon. We're at the very beginning of this data access journey, and we'll be super excited to hear your feedback about how you use it. All right, last thing, for situations where trusted identity propagation doesn't really solve your whole end-to-end problem, maybe you have a bunch of vendors, favored vendors you work with for ice cream ingredients, and you want to be able to give them historical ingredient volume so they can prepare a quote. You want the best price for the new seasonal flavors you're going to have. Christmas is coming. So you might have a situation where you want to be able to share data outside your organization boundary. And Resource Access Manager is a service that allows you to share things either within your organization, which is the most common case, but you can also do it outside your organization. In the diagram you're seeing here, account B is the one that has the data in it. This is the one from my company, and I can share using Lake Formation the information from my Glue data catalog with account A, which is my vendor's account. When Resource Access Manager sends a request to the vendor's account, when they accept that sharing request, then they can discover this data and use it to prepare their quote, and hopefully I'll get a great price.
Yeah, I think my favorite feature about Resource Access Manager, also known as RAM, it's a super fun title, is the discoverability, right? So when it is shared and is accepted, then they see it in their consoles, they see it in their list APIs. It's very powerful.
And this isn't just for sharing data. There are networking cases for sharing. I definitely, how many resource types does
I think we're in the
days?
60s.
There are quite a few resources it supports with a bunch of use cases. So I definitely check it out if you have situations where you need to share something across your organization.
Yep. Okay.
It has been a lot of jobs. You have had 4 jobs in the last almost hour. So take a deep breath, and we want to make sure that you take some takeaways back with you, either to advise the actual people in your company who have those jobs, or perhaps to do yourselves. So the first one is, make sure you're checking out IAM Identity Center for your human identities and your workforce and how they access AWS. It gives you that central place where you can manage access centrally and connect with your existing identity source. And if you haven't already, by all means, please enable MFA, especially for your most important credentials, your most powerful credentials, the root credentials in your accounts. We announced a few weeks ago that we're going to start enforcing MFA for the most powerful credentials you have, which are the root credentials and the management account of your org. You don't have to wait for us to enforce it. If you do not already have MFA on those credentials, please go home and put them on there. The second thing for your central security team, set up that data perimeter we were talking about, and check out the curated guardrails and control tower and see if they give you a head start to go ahead and do it.
And I gave you this homework already. Go turn on unused access findings and inspect those unused access keys. You don't need them. No long-term creds lying around. And as we head into the holidays, maybe you need to have some extra time. I don't know. And so automate permission reviews. Use the tooling. Try to bring that permissions management closer to your developers. Give them more information sooner. Help them go faster.
From there, when you move up that stack for your application development teams, The message is, do not roll your own, focus on what your app is great at, and adopt the hosted application, the managed application, the managed services that make your life easier. Cognito, verified permissions for the sign-in and the permissions within your applications. And finally, get started with user-centric data access. We hope you'll check out those capabilities and the integrations we've supported, and really do, as I said before, welcome your feedback.
Maybe Pickles will get access to ice cream if he's wearing his fancy Christmas hat.
Oh, ice cream's not good for him, Bridget. I don't think we should do that.
All right. And our favorite identity and access resources. So remember that fine-grainedness I talked about, the actions, the resources, and all our friends with the condition keys. Those are all in the service authorization reference in our AWS documentation. It's one of the pages I frequent most. And then multiple people have mentioned to me that becoming an IAM policy expert in 60 minutes or less is a talk I gave in 2018. I can't seem to make it better. I keep trying. And so that's a talk that talks a lot about our policy evaluation and how policies work together. It's all still true today. There's more.
And partly because this talk is out there, we actually didn't cover in-depth writing policies in this talk. If you really do want to know in-depth how to write a policy, this talk will help you prepare to write them. We focused in this talk more about you've got them out there, how do you make sure they're right, how do you refine them, and the combo is pretty powerful.
It is a powerful combo. And then we talked about several new launches today. Some we didn't even put on slides, we just talked about. So visit the AWS News blog and the AWS Security blog. And finally, we will be at Reinforce because security is a thing that we like to talk about. We have a whole conference dedicated to it. And so come see us in Philadelphia, East Coast. All right, thanks everybody. We'll be here answering questions if you have any.